Alright, welcome back. So in this video, we are going to start with some, common ways of actually interacting with the DOM using jQuery, right? We already know how to do all those things with normal raw JavaScript, but in this video, we are going to start with the things you can do with the jQuery, right? Alright, so here I can go to the simple API documentation, right? And you can ignore what API means for now, and you can just focus on this is the documentation, right? So the first thing that we're going to see is the .css, right? So the first thing that we saw when we were studying raw JavaScript about the DOM and modification was that you can modify the styles, right? And you can do a similar thing in this by using the .css thing. So I'll search for CSS and I need first result, I think. Yeah. So if I click on this gives me the CSS section, right? And you see I have a lot of classes here. And the one that we are talking about the most here is the .css. So now you can see they have a lot of things here, and we are going to cover all of these one by one, right? So instead of reading this, you can actually go to these documents and read them if you want to, but I'm actually going to tell you everything, so it's not really that big a deal, right? Alright, so now, first of all, again, for manipulating, we'll have to select, right? So what you can do is, you can select the thing, let's say by doing h1, and this will give you h1. And now, let's say you want to change the color of this h1 to something, right? Then you can do .css, and now this will take two arguments, right? This will take two arguments. First will be the property name, which will be, let's say, color, right? And the next will be the value of that property, right? And I can say purple. So you see here, the h1 has turned purple, which is like, you saw how easy that was, right? You didn't have to write long statements. And let's see what this would have taken if we had done this by normal, raw.js. Then I would have wrote selector h1 dot style dot color is equal to purple. And I mean, we could change this to green so that you can see that this was working. And you see this is working, right? So first off, you see that this is almost double length. And when you're writing something this small for your whole program, that actually becomes much more easy, right? It becomes much easier, right? So yeah, that is what you could do with the CSS selector. But this is just the common CSS. Writing long lines, you would actually get used to this and you would think that why do I need to remember two syntaxes when I can do the same thing with this one? Then why will I need to learn the language? So that is because this one line here is actually much more powerful than this one line here. And how is that? Well, that is basically because of two things, right? First, multiple styles. So let's say you want to change 4 things in this h1, right? And let's say I make an object for that, saying that I want to make the color blue. Then I want my background color to be, and this should be in quotes, of course. So I'm making in styles object here, right? And I want my background color to be, let's say, purple. And I want my border to be 2 pixels, solid, black. And let's think of one other property. I want my, let's say, font size to be 4 rem. Alright, So these are the styles that I want. And now if I see this object, this is what I get, right? So now I want to apply all these 4 styles to this particular h1, right? So in raw JavaScript, there's no way you could use this object. What you would have to do is, you would have to do document.querySelector h1, you would have to take it in a variable, then you would have to write that variable name.style.color blue, variable name.style.background color purple, similarly for the border and similarly for the font size. But how you can do that through JavaScript, through jQuery, sorry, is you can write $h1 dot CSS, our normal syntax, and then you can simply pass in this object. And you see all the styles got applied by themselves. So you can see how easy it becomes to apply multiple styles through, a single line using jQuery, right? And this is one of the big uses of the CSS. And this was just to show you the power, right? So you might have, a lot of things having the same styles. So first is you could select all of them and make a loop and iterate, or something like that. Or you could simply make a object for that and you could apply that to all of them, right? Or you could give a class, obviously that's fine. But if you want to apply multiple styles to a thing, then you can see how powerful jQuery is. Or if you don't have any object, you don't want to define new objects every time, like main objects. So you could also make an object here saying that you could make an object here and give all the styles in here. Let's say I do color pink, and I see the color turns to pink and all the other styles are retained, right? So this is one of the other uses. And one thing that I like to show you, that while we were making this object, we use the camel case for JavaScript. However, if we were doing this without the object, by doing something like the 2 arguments thing, then we would simply write background color, and let's say we make this black. So you see here we wrote the CSS selector. So this is one of the things that you need to remember, that when you're passing this as an argument, you want this to be the CSS selector. But when you are passing this as an object, you need to have this as the JS selector, right? So this is the one tricky thing that you need to remember in this. Alright, so now the most powerful thing that I think personally that this .css has, right? Applying to multiple elements, and that is why I have this class right here. So let's say I want to select the thing, things with the class of optional. So I can do dot optional. I need my closing. Yeah. So let's say you want to apply some styles to these 2. So what do you do in normal JavaScript? You select them by doing query selector all or get elements by class name, right? You get them in an array, you make a for loop or a while loop, you iterate over that array, and you apply the styles one by one, right? Let's see how you do that with jQuery. You simply write $optional.css and you pass in your style. And what this will do, this will automatically iterate over this whole array, and this will automatically apply all these styles to this, right? So let's say I do color steel blue. You see they turn steel blue, and you didn't even have to make a loop, you just had to write one line. So this is, I think, the most powerful thing in the .css selector and .css function here, that you don't need to iterate over it, and all the logic behind this particular function is handling the iterating part by itself, right? And that is the most useful thing about this, according to me. So these were just 2 things. Imagine having a lot of things. Well, basically the number of lines would be the same, but this obviously becomes much easier. And let's say you wanted to apply the same styles. We have the styles object, if you remember, right? So you could do .optional, and inside here you could write styles. That gives you the same styles that you wanted, right? And obviously this does not look good, but of course Right. So this was the .css thing, right? And I want to show you two more things in this particular video, which is first, let's go back to our normal documentation and let's search for text content, and we get this .text function, right? So again, these are a lot of things here, but we can just simply start. So let's say I want the text inside this with the ID yellow, right? So what I can do is I can select the thing with the ID of yellow. Let me check that's giving me the correct thing, right? Then I do yellow dot text, and let's see what I get. I get banana. So you can retrieve the text content by simply writing dot text, right? And that's not a very big thing. You could have done that using raw JavaScript too, right? And of course, this is not a really big thing, but you can see how small this has become, right? And one more thing you could do, let's say ul dot text, and you see that gives you all the text inside the ul, right? So this is the normal texting. And one more thing you could do, that if you pass something inside of this, like let's say almonds, and I press enter, I see this works. So you have a very simple syntax to actually retrieve the text or pass the text, right? And one more thing you can do, you can call a function in here that's returning a string value, right? And they have a lot of things here too, not that much, but all right. And you can see that the text, when a number of or boolean is supplied, it will be converted to a string representation. Meaning if I try to do something like true here, and then I try to retrieve the text, you can see that turned to true, but when I retrieve it, it is returned to string, right? So everything in the this function is done in strings. That's one thing that you need to know. Alright, so let's get back to here, and the next thing that I'll search is HTML. And I want the first one, I think, second one, right? So this is the .html, and this is basically the replacement for inner HTML, right? So let's say now I clear this, and I want to change the HTML. I want to make this bold, and I want to change this back to banana because I have the ID of yellow on it, right? So how I do that, I'll just simply say $. I'll write, what is this? This is the hashtag yellow, right? And first I'll get the HTML inside of this. Let's see what I get. I get true because that's the only HTML inside of it. And now if I want, I can pass a string in here saying banana, right? And if I press enter, I see I get a banana with, which is bolded because of these strong tags. And now if I get the HTML, I'm getting this. So .html was another common method that you could use. And the one thing that I wanted to notice in this whole video, we have finished the 3 tags that I thought for this particular video, right? And that one thing that I want to notice is, first, jQuery is extremely powerful, right? You can see, especially in the CSS function, it's like super powerful. You don't need to iterate, you don't need to, write multiple lines to apply the same style. And second is that it really simple to write, and that is one of the main factors that are given to support JavaScript, right? That it's really simple. You just write $, you write the thing, the CSS selector in between, you write dot, and then you have a separate function for everything. It is probably the easiest syntax you could get to do DOM elimination, and not probably, it is actually the easiest syntax you could get, right? And this is not even an effort to memorize. You'll actually be able to do this really well, really soon, without any difficulties, right? Alright, so in conclusion, 1, it is powerful, 2nd, it is simple, and 3rd, we studied 3 things: CSS, text, HTML, and all of these are functions inside the jQuery, right? And you can use them simply. Alright, so that's it for this video. I'll see you in the next one.